Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tim. It's been a long time since I've posted on my YouTube page, so I just wanted to give kind of a quick follow up here. Well, I did it. I had my check ride on the 23rd of April, so just this past Thursday, and I passed. So I know it's important, and the videos out there helped me a lot on how people passed their check rides and just a quick synopsis of what happened. So this is kind of like my give back to all of you to help you who have your private pilot check ride coming up here in the near future. So first, let me start by saying that I've been preparing for this for 25 years. I started flying in 1994 when I was 16 years old. I soloed at 16, but never got my license. So in 1997, I flew a lot more. Again, never got my license. Fast forward to 3 years ago, so 2018, I decided I wanted to start flying again. And I lost my logbook, which had over 68 hours in it, spread out over several years. Luckily for me, I was still good friends with one of my original flight instructors, who is a captain at United Airlines now, if that gives you any idea how much time has gone by. So I sent him a blank logbook at his request because he keeps really good records, and he was able to recoup me 17 hours of flying time, which is nice. Um, right after I got that logbook back from him, I found a flight school here in the Orlando area and started flying again. Um, I had always had a huge fear of taking the written test. So that kind of put a little bit of a pause on me. COVID happened. The flight school shut down for 3 or 4 months that I was going to. My instructor left. Just all sorts of things happening at once. You know, job losses, etc. Um, Fast forward to maybe October of 2020, I finally said enough is enough, and I just buckled down. The holidays came and went. I started flying with a new flight school at another airport here in Orlando, Apopka, which is close to my house. Found a good flight instructor. We connected pretty well. Young guy, super awesome. But he was dedicated on getting me finished. So beginning of January, I started just buckling down for the written test, and I finally passed it with an 80. So happy, such a relief, because that's what stopped me from going any further back in '97. So got past that, got my hours in, of course. A lot of check ride prep, a lot of check ride prep. My instructor left town for a while to go do some work outside of the city, and I flew solo for what, 8 hours of just nothing but check ride prep by myself. So basically, all I was doing was he gave me the list of things to do in order. Diversion, stalls, slow flight. I did that all myself for 7.5 hours, almost 8 hours of solo time. Huge confidence builder. In there in between, we booked the check ride for the 23rd of April. So about 5 or 6 weeks out. It wasn't too bad. It was enough to where I felt comfortable, to where I knew the flying I had to get done to get it done. So, of course, leading up to the check ride, I was super nervous, especially right after we booked it. It was surreal. I couldn't sleep. I was running through maneuvers in my head. And then just one day after flying all those 8 hours of solo time, I knew I was ready. And I started sleeping again. Night before the check ride, I slept great, had a nice meal, went to bed at like 8 o'clock. My check ride was at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning on the 23rd of April. Slept so good. Made a nice steak, had a glass of wine, and I was just out. So woke up on Thursday morning a little nervous, feeling a little bit of anxiety for, I'm sure that's normal for everybody. If it's not normal, then I don't know, good for you. But don't lie and say you're not nervous when you are. So it's kind of a funny story. I got to the training room, and the examiner was already there. Now, I knew this was going to happen the day before because another flight instructor told me that he was going to be there at 8 a.m. to meet with him to cover some stuff about a military student. But so here I walk into the room and I start setting up all my stuff, and the DPE is actually sitting there talking to the other flight instructor. And I'm like, oh God. And of course he was kind of facing me, but I set up all my stuff nice and neat. Anything that he needed, I faced his side of the table. including his envelope with his fee in it with cash, which is what I recommend you do. Um, so yeah, so I felt organized. I should have taken a picture, but I didn't. So I walked out while they were still talking because I was now about 8:45, so I was set up kind of early. And just to get some fresh air, I didn't want to sit in there and listen to them and get all distracted. So they were done right at like 8:55. He came out, went to the bathroom, whatever, took a break. I went back in. I sat down right at 8:59. He walks in, introduces himself to me. Super nice guy, just really put me at ease right off the bat, sort of. Kind of gave me a brief synopsis as to what the check ride was going to look like, which was cool. Um, it made it very clear to me that he was there. He was there to pass me. That was just the thing. He's not there to fail me. He's not there to make my life hard. He's not there to give me trick questions. He's there to help me get past this. So again, made me feel comfortable right off the bat. I was prepared. I had my private pilot check ride binder here. I'm sorry, April 22nd was my check ride. Inside here, of course, I had my IACRA printed out. I had my results from my written exam. We'll come back to that written exam stuff. So I was good to go there. That was the important documents. I also had my flight planning and weather briefing for my cross-country portion that he gave to me. Included in here, I had all my weight and balance charts, diagrams. He had me going from the Apopka Airport down to KFMY, so Fort Myers Airport down there. So that's the plan I did. In here, I had all the weight and balance charts that were taken out of the POH and printed and completed. And we're going to come back to this because this actually came up in the oral portion. So he went through my logbook. Of course, I had totaled up and tabbed everything in there for him already. So that was done. He appreciated that. All my hours looked good. Everything was fine. We had a little bit of an hiccup with the aircraft logbooks. He never asked me any questions as far as the aircraft logbooks go right then and there as he was looking at them. He was looking at them more for him and his safety and to make sure that the aircraft was legal to fly. He went through the ADs. He found a little bit of a mix-up with some of the AD numbers that were complied with in the last 100 hour, which the aircraft had just had 2 weeks prior. So he got up and he wanted to go talk to the maintenance guys who luckily are on site. And that took about 40 minutes. So here I am sitting at the table. Great. Are we going to discontinue because of this maintenance thing or what's going to happen? So while he was in there, I got up, I went outside, got some fresh air outside the hangar and just, chatted with my flight instructor who was there and a couple of the other people. He came back in about 30 minutes later. I mean, time was a blur that day and said, all right, well, let's let the maintenance guys get that resolved and we're going to go ahead and just get started. So cool. So he gave me the Airman Bill of Rights, which we went over. I signed, he signed, and we started. He basically started off with right off the bat, let's talk about the flight today that I gave to you. We're going down to Fort Myers. And just started right into the scenario. So tell me about the weight and balance of the aircraft. And I told him, well, oddly enough, the numbers I got off of your website that you had pre-posted on there for the private pilot oral were overweight. So we have to reduce some fuel. And he was like, I see how I did that. I did that on purpose. So make sure you check that stuff or get that information from the DPE. Super important. He asked me if I was familiar with the Airman Certification Standards, which of course I was. I had the Airman Certification Standards opened up, highlighted things I covered, highlighted things that I missed on the written that I knew the subjects, because again, those are subject numbers. They're not question numbers. So when you read those, you're only going to find those numbers and those that you missed in the ACS. So just know what you missed. We went over that. He then just started into the questioning. Tell me about the weight and balance. We're going down there. We've had a few drinks. Can we go once we get there? Just things like that. I mean, it was a conversation, and he really, really made it good. As far as the weather goes, He asked me a couple of questions, if it's hot outside, is it going to affect our performance? Obviously, yes, it is. Um, Standard questions, what makes this flight legal for you as a private pilot? Obviously the pro rata. I'm not making any money, splitting costs, that kind of stuff. Um, he asked me how I came up with the weight and balance. So that's again where those charts come in handy. And also I used a CX3 flight computer. He threw a scenario out at me. Okay, so the passenger I had in the back who weighed 170 pounds, he's not going to go with us anymore. He just called. What are you going to do? I whipped out my CX3 and I just removed him. Got the new weight, the new CG, and we were good to go. He was satisfied with that, so I put that away. When it comes to the weather portion, this is, and again, every DPE is going to be different that you speak to. He had me go into ForeFlight, which is cool. And I went to the flight plan and I just ran the weather brief there. Of course, he asked me all the different ways I could get the weather brief. So 1-800-WX brief, I can call them, or I could do it in ForeFlight, which is what I did. I went over every single page with him, the synopsis, luckily it was a beautiful day. I went over the wind charts, everything. And I just explained everything, the METARs, the TAFs, and he never asked me any questions. I went over every single thing. When the weather page came up, I showed him the high pressure systems, and I kind of just explained to him, hey, here's a high pressure system here. We just had a low pressure system past us. Here's your wind charts. Here's your, occluded front up here, just so that he could see I knew what I was looking at. And again, no questions ever came up when it came to that weather. Back to the written, he was looking at his computer and he told me he was going to do that, not to worry about it. But he would look at his computer and then just kind of ask me a random question like, hey, if you just drank and, when can you go fly? That kind of thing. But it's kind of funny because I'm pretty sure I missed a drug and alcohol question on the written. I think it had something to do with reporting a DUI to the FAA. I think that was the question I saw, but it doesn't tell you that. That's the one you missed. It just gives you the letter on the bottom of the FAA written test, and it says weather or drugs. So I kind of saw what he was doing there. All good though. We got through that. I did stumble on something when he asked me what inspections are required. Obviously, you have your annual every 12 calendar months. You have your 100-hour inspection because the aircraft is used for rental purposes. And he was like, "Is that it? Was that it?" And I just had a brain fart. Yeah, that was it. I had my FARs tabbed, ready to go. Obviously, I spent money and time doing that, but I'm glad I did it. I never had to refer to it, but I had it ready to go. So back to what I missed on the, where I stumbled. We'll come back to that in just a second. So after all of that, he said, all right, well, let's brief about the flight portion. So, of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I just passed the oral. So I kind of looked at him and I was like, does that mean I just passed the oral exam? And he was like, I could ask you a couple more questions on the flight portion. So, okay, cool. Moving on, he briefed the flight portion. Here's what we're going to do. You're a pilot in command. I'm just your passenger. If at any time I need to take control of the aircraft, let's not do that. Obviously, we're going to have positive change of controls when I have to go into unusual attitudes under the hood, that kind of stuff. But he said, overall, your PIC, any scenarios that I give to you is going to start with, this is a simulation. And then I'll go right into the scenario. He's like, that way that there's no question at all that this is a simulation. He's like, if we do have an emergency during the check ride, a real life emergency, we're going to work on it together and troubleshoot it and make sure everything's good. And that was it. I mean, he briefed that and he said, let's take a 15-minute break and let's go fly. So I packed up my stuff and I went to the restroom and of course now I'm like, okay, I got past the oral. Now I'm super stressed because I got to fly with somebody in the airplane who I've never flown with, and he's the DPE. So I went to the restroom. I went to my car, got a guzzle of water. Luckily, the hangar's right there. I can park right next to the hangar, so that's convenient. As I come back around, I see that he's doing a pre-flight. So I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Okay. He's doing his own pre-flight. Cool. I get it. He wants to make sure the airplane's completely safe. No problem. But he is like straight up on the ground,